I mean, you're talking 900 million ounces in the ETF versus a 25 billion ounce market.
Each false information right off the bat. But at least the interviewer, he asked the question everybody else has, and Jeff didn't say this is now February 4th. See, look, that's February 4th. You heard what he said February 2nd, and here's what he did and didn't tell anybody about on February 3rd. And he has the audacity to go and lie on TV since then. But when you call Goldman Sachs, they won't answer this. Won't deny it. They won't explain it. Rosty, are you waiting to spring your trap? Let me know so I can be there for the history. Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. Hope you enjoyed the first half of the doubleheader. I think you're going to love the second half just as much because we really examined some of the comments of Rosten Behnam of the CFTC, as well as some of the other context in which he's given those comments, other things that have happened. And especially because when they talk about transparency, that's just flat out whatever word you want to use. But I'll show you what they have not been transparent about. And let's get started. So here's Rosten Behnam. And here's what he said that was reported on March 18th, 2021. I might add, before I made a video about this the other day, it had 80 views. So one of the questions I would have is what efforts are made to get these updates out to more people? But it's all right. I'll do it for you. So here we go.
And I think as a commodity regulator, as a markets regulator, we can certainly play an important role. And
right off the bat, I completely agree. I get tons of questions, and if you guys can just answer them, completely agree.
Intend to do that so that we can add credit to the private sector-led effort, which is really fantastic. Institutions across the globe, governments including, to hit net zero by 2030, 2040, 20. And I think as a commodity regulator, as a markets regulator, we can certainly play an important role, and I intend to do that so that we can add credit to the private sector-led effort, which is really fantastic, and give and lend our expertise in the market space, and the structure space, and the clearing.
Expertise in the markets, okay. We're waiting for that. I gave you my expertise in the markets, and I've asked for a public forum because I think my expertise in the markets exceeds yours. Let me know when you'd like more information, because I gave you the evidence. It's sitting there. The crime is continuing. You've given no indication that you're even aware of it.
Space, ensure the integrity of these markets, because that is a huge issue in this space, to ensure.
Absolutely.
That the carbon credits, the certificates, have credibility, and that anyone who's making a commitment.
I'm not going to dig into carbon credits today, but they don't have any credibility with me, for whatever that's worth.
And using these using them in a credible way so that we can hit the targets that we're all aspiring to hit.
Well, I do want to come back to sustainability later in our conversation, but I did want to turn to another issue that is getting a lot of attention, especially in the equities markets, and that's the rise of the retail trader and investor. We had, several weeks back, certain stocks being, the darlings of the retail community and driving up prices, really sort of pitting retail participants against some of the institutional buyers in these markets.
Interesting what he said there, pitting retail against some of the institutional.
And the CFTC put out a public statement around the silver markets, and you're keeping a close eye on that. Can you follow up on what the CFTC may be doing in regards to this rise of retail participation, making sure that these important vehicles that we talk about, futures and options, are accessible to the retail participants, but also with the proper risk disclosures and the proper oversight of those products? So give us some thoughts on how this phenomena is impacting the CFTC.
Yeah, thanks, Walt. It's a great question. It's something that I've been thinking about, and the events around the silver markets happened shortly after I took over. I think in late January, and I think it's important to distinguish.
I have questions about that. We'll leave that aside for today.
What an equity space with what happened in our markets, in the future space, specifically with the silver contract. And in many respects, the resiliency and the market structure of the futures market really were able to tamp down.
The resiliency and structure of the futures market were able to tamp down. I'd like clarification on what that means. What is it that they were tamping down? I've provided my evidence. It's on the channel. I stand by everything that I've said there. People were buying a lot of silvers, so the price is supposed to rise, right? This is a free market. You're the acting chairman of the CFTC, acting commissioner of the CFTC. Here is the CFTC's mission statement. Mission of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission is to promote the integrity, resilience, and vibrancy of the U.S. derivatives market through sound regulation. There's some people who've been waiting 41 years in silver. And we'll get to what Jerome Smith reports about the CFTC back in 1980, but here's the press release right on the front. I would like to learn more, that's for sure. February 1st, Commodity Future Trading Commission Acting Chairman Rosten Behnam released the following statement regarding recent trading in the silver markets. The CFTC is closely monitoring recent activity in the silver market, said Acting Chairman Behnam. Commission is communicating with fellow regulators, the exchanges, and stakeholders to address any potential threats to the integrity of the derivatives markets for silver and remains vigilant in surveying these markets for fraud and manipulation. All right. I'm recording on Sunday, April 18th. It's over 2 months now. I've laid out my evidence. We saw what the LBMA is saying, and what have you found? Here's the evidence that I sent you on February 12th. These are the questions I have. A lot of people who've watched this video have as well. They send me their questions and make these up. I mean, I up late at night answering them, calling people, talking to people. These are the people that you're supposed to be protecting in your own mission statement. Here's the CFTC's press release page. Let's see, Ross was correct. January 21st, CFTC names Rosten Behnam acting chairman. I can understand that one of the greatest felonies in financial history occurs 10 days after you've taken over. I get it. I mean, that could be a lot to handle. It's not, you have you guys requested a $304 million budget last year. So I think you'd have the resources, some friends. Plus I took my time to give the evidence to you. We'll get to that in a second. But I guess I was noticing even Heath Tarbert concludes historic tenure. Let's read about Heath's history he made. Man that didn't do anything about the crime that I've been reporting on for a decade now. Included his tenure. Where is he going to work now? Let's say that in here. Incredibly proud of the agency's record-setting accomplishments over the last 18 months as silver continues to be rigged. He was there when I interviewed Bart Chilton, I'm assuming. You could watch the Bart Chilton interview. You could have watched it on his way out. He didn't mention he didn't answer any of the questions I have. That's Heath. Here. General Counsel Dan Davis departs the agency on January 15th. Why are all these people leaving? Daniel Davis, can you answer these questions that I can't figure out? Because, well, you're leaving and off to wherever you're going now. I hope it's not some job right now you're profiting off of any of this. I hope that's not the case. That was interesting. He also helped along this guy, the innovation effort begun by Chairman Giancarlo. I've heard of Chairman Giancarlo's work because he gave a speech about it. Trump administration popped the 2017 Bitcoin bubble, ex-CFTC chair says. Pop the bubble? What did he say? Trump administration popped the bubble? So it means so the title is implying they took action to change the price of a financial market. I don't believe that's anywhere in the charter. Trump administration acted to deflate the Bitcoin bubble, acted to deflate. So they decided the price was too high, acted to deflate. Let's be clear about it. Here's Christopher Giancarlo, who left the CFTC at the end of his 5-year term as chairman. So he was there while the silver manipulation was going on. Has he seen the Bart Chilton interview? This is interesting. One of the untold stories of the past few years is that the CFTC, the Treasury, the SEC, and the National Economic Director at the time, Gary Cohn, former Goldman Sachs executive, Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, at the time, former Goldman Sachs executive, Jeff Curry, went on TV and lied. Okay, so Steve Mnuchin, you were the former Treasury Secretary. What do you think? Gary Cohn, what do you think? Anyone in the Trump administration, what do you think about what Jeff Curry said? Man lied. It's your gang. Actually, I heard that, it's interesting. There's this movie, 3 Billboards, that I think there's a law somewhere that, you know, when you're in a gang, even if you're down the block, but something quirky happens over there, you're liable. I don't know if that's true. I've heard it. I don't know. You guys are all lawyers. I've been doing your job for you. I didn't have time to check on that. So they believe that the launch of a Bitcoin futures would have the impact of popping the Bitcoin bubble, and it worked. Well, thank you, Christopher Giancarlo. If there is any justice in this country, explain that in a courtroom. You got all your friends are lawyers, so maybe you and Commissioner Behnam can represent each other. They believe the launch of a Bitcoin futures would have the impact of popping the Bitcoin bubble, and it worked. If this quote is accurate, then that man's a felon. Who decided that it was a bubble? You were the marketplace. You rigged the market. You bragged about it, and I'm going to report it. And I'll be in front of your ex-agency Tuesday morning if you want to address that. And it worked. Launch of a Bitcoin futures would have the impact of pop. Where could they have learned that? Where could anybody have learned that? How did they know that? If this quote is accurate, and all these people believe that the launch of Bitcoin futures would have the impact of popping a bubble, what led you to believe that? If this quote is accurate, I pose this question to anyone. I've called it already: JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, CME, CFTC, Department of Justice, iShares, BlackRock, whoever answers the phone when you call iShares, any of these guys, no one can answer it. I've asked. So what led you to, Gary Cohn, what led you to believe that the launch of a Bitcoin future would have that effect? What was the study? What was the research? Freedom of Information Act. All right, I'll make a note. I'll check that. Or maybe somebody watching can request Freedom of Information Act, because I'd like to know. I think anybody who's investing their money in these markets has a right to know. These guys are public servants. You took tax money to bail out Goldman Sachs a couple of years ago. You guys are all you're swearing public oaths in these positions. So that's that. So somebody explain that. I think American citizens have a right to know that. In his speech, he elaborated further, saying Bitcoin's dramatic price run up in 2017 was the first major bubble following the 2008 crisis. Well, if he actually did say that, then the man lied in his position. I think that's perjury or whatever the crime should be, because
we need to do more to make the contributions we should be making to rebuild the middle class. I don't think top-down works in America. I think building the middle class, investing in the middle class, making college debt-free so more young people can get their education, helping people refinance their debt from college at a lower rate. Those are the kinds of things that will really boost the economy. Broad-based, inclusive.
Hillary Clinton, since you're popping up now, how are you going to pay for that? I can't figure it out. My experience includes 2 years at Moody's, the bond rating agency that I will call fraudulent for still rating US AAA. They should know better. They do know better. And I went to Wharton, internship at Merrill Lynch, 7 years trading equity options for Susquehanna International Group, which between you and me, anyone wants to bet or gamble on anything in the world, and I'll pick them and that background. You can pick whoever you want. Let me know. Then 10 years exposing government and criminal fraud. How is the government going to pay for that? Joe Biden, how is that going to be funded?
Growth is what we.
Let me know where I can get that question answered. Jamie Dimon, can I get an answer from you? I've called your representatives. They didn't know who to talk to. I can't figure it out. I'm asking for help. I told you my background. 50,000 subscribers here, so apparently someone else is watching. Somebody can help me with these questions because I can't figure them out.
In America, not more advantages for people at the very top.
Mr. Trump.
Hillary Clinton, would you like to discuss advantages for the people at the very top in a safe forum? ArcadiaEconomics.com. Let me know. You can contact me through there. Hunter Biden, Joe, anybody who can answer these questions, I leave the challenge open. No, it's not a challenge. This isn't a challenge. I'm not trying to be a punk. I'm saying there's a felony. I've explained 8 million ways to Sunday. I wrote a book about it. I'm trying to get answers from all these guys who swear oaths and say these things in public. You can do them all over YouTube now. Tell me would you like me to stand and to put my name and defend what statement I've said that's inaccurate. But I can't get answers to any of these. This is the nation's wealth. Hillary Clinton, you may not know this. The dollar was a measure of gold. Silver was into coinage. You may not have studied that. That was money until Richard Nixon. Read End of the London Gold Pool, or actually I made a video on it. Watch it. You'll learn something. That's why people are pissed off. They're not stupid, and they know when you print money to cover it. That's why they bought silver, and then you guys got caught again, so you have to rig the price. So Hillary Clinton, George Bush, Dick Cheney, whoever, Santa Claus, NORAD, that you're wasting money for their stupid track Santa. You think that's funny? Let me know if you can answer any of these questions. Well, we'll get back to Trump's big fat bubble.
Typical politician, all talk, no action, sounds good, doesn't work, never going to happen. Our country is suffering because people like Secretary Clinton have made such bad decisions in terms of our jobs and in terms of what's going on. Now, look, we have the worst revival of an economy since the Great Depression. And believe me, we're in a bubble right now. And the only thing that looks good is the stock market. But if you raise interest rates even a little bit, that's going to come crashing down. We are in a big, fat, ugly bubble.
Let's hear that a couple more times.
But that's going to come crashing down. We are in a big, fat, ugly bubble.
Mr.
A little bit, that's going to come crashing down.
Review that statement?
We are in a big, fat, ugly bubble, and we better be awfully careful. And we have a Fed that's doing political things. This Janet Yellen of the Fed is doing political by keeping the interest rates at this level. And believe me, the day Obama goes off and he leaves and he goes out to the golf course for the rest of his life.
The president
that looks good is the stock market, but if you raise interest rates even a little bit, that's going to come crashing down. We are in a big, fat, ugly bubble.
Alan
we better be awfully careful. And we have a Fed that's doing political
Behnam,
things.
Any thoughts
Janet
here?
Yellen.
Janet
and the only
Yellen,
thing that looks good is the stock market. But if you raise interest rates even a little bit, that's going to come crashing down. We are in a big, fat.
Now, it sounds like at least with this statement, maybe he was watching my channel or reading, because I've been writing about how this was going to collapse. You would never be able to raise interest rates for the very obvious reason that anyone who's can even spell Ludwig von Mises would understand. Someone like Alan Greenspan, why don't you ask him? When he was hanging out with Ayn Rand, he got it just clearly. And then he's in office, he forgets, now he criticizes Bernanke while Bernanke's making a fortune giving speeches. So Ben, Janet.
And believe me, we're in a bubble
asking for
right
help.
now. And the only thing that looks good is the stock market. But if you raise interest rates even a little bit, that's going to come crashing down. We are in a big, fat, ugly bubble. And we better.
So this was 2016, but here Giancarlo elaborated further, saying Bitcoin's price run up was the first major bubble following the 2008 crisis. So if the man actually said that, either it's a lie, or I would think that given his position, that's gross negligence, one of the two. I'm just asking. Commissioner Behnam, do you have a comment on that? Gary Gensler, do you have a comment on that? Is there someone who can explain where I can get, I'm trying to do my job. I've created jobs. I left Wall Street. Hey, I left Wall Street because of this. I saw fraud, and without a job, without a cushy law firm or some big paycheck lined up, I took what I had and I left because I saw it was dirty. I can't answer these questions. Although I went through hell, drove a fucking taxi for a year. So I know how hard it is for someone who's trying to make a living driving a taxi, especially with the way prices are going up right now. To ask my mom for help every month, which is pretty fucking embarrassing after, so much we're thinking about the Wharton degree then. Wish I'd saved the receipt. Actually, part of my plan, I had invested properly before the metals got rigged in 2011. So that was part of my plan. I didn't expect that no one would be able to answer any of these questions. Actually, I had a great bet on then. And if any of the people I've named explain why will they go through the discovery process in a courtroom and discuss what happened when silver got to $50 at the end of April in 2011. I will put my name and face, and I'll put my hand on a Bible or whatever other rituals that somebody wants me to do. I will discuss it. And I mention this because I went through all these things. I've now created a business, created jobs. I think that's something, I mean, I have 50,000 people who watch. They seem to appreciate it. I have lawyers who volunteer to do stuff for me for free. Look at that magic trick. Do you want to ask me how I've done any of this? Is it magic? You guys have $304 million. You asked for $304 million last year. Whatever year it was when I Googled it. Or what is your budget? How much did you spend? I'm doing all this on a shoestring budget. That's my mom, who's seen me live through depression and half the time not want to wake up the next day for most of the first. But I went through all those obstacles. It's cool. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm just saying that that's why I sound a little ticked off, because I've gone through a lot. There's a lot of other people who've done the same damn thing. It's interesting, the timing of certain things. Here, this Trump video, there's Bernie Madoff. I heard some people killed themselves after they found out he had stolen their money. JP Morgan knew about it. That's what CNBC says. They knew about it. They pulled their money out. CFTC, how have you held them accountable? SEC, how have you held them accountable? Gary Gensler, how's anybody held them accountable? They got their money out. It's ironic because I launched something called the Silver Industry Integrity Committee, rounding up, doing it all on my dime. I don't tax people, take their money, figure out how to do this, or they volunteer. You guys want to know how I'll help? I wrote the evidence down for you. I'm offering to help. In fact, later on in the video, I'll walk through all the evidence I wrote down that the CFTC has been sitting on for months. Well, Gary's off, or not Gary, Rosten Behnam, but he's busy with climate change. Where's that one? Acting, here's March 17th, month and a half after what I would call the greatest Silver Tuesday. I'm naming it now, since we're watching history in progress. After Silver Tuesday, went on arguably the greatest day of silver demand in history. I mean, you can look at the data and talk to bullion dealers. I did it. It's all on my channel, buddy. All there. I did all the work for you. Price fell 10%. And Rosten Behnam explains in his interview why. Yet February 12th, I gave you the first round evidence. She had a lot to do that day. And I remember talking to a lawyer. I was like, holy Jesus. Somewhere between 10 and 20 hours in total of witnesses who will test. I had to have my partner start taking all the emails that came through our Arcadia site because I couldn't handle those, let alone the ones that come directly to me. I stopped and all that, wrote all the evidence down for you. We'll review exactly what you've been sitting on. But you were busy at climate risk, March 17th. So while you were there, though, there are a lot of people who have been waiting 41 years. And you want to, would anybody like to discuss what happened? Actually, maybe let's don't worry. We'll come back to some of the other whoppers in there from Giancarlo, but let's hear this. This will help set the context of why sometimes people say I sound like I'm a little frustrated. I'm actually great, fortunately. I'm very fortunate. I've overcome those obstacles. I have people in my life who really care about me and support me. And that's why I for the first time in my life, I feel completely great and okay. But I'm making these videos for the other people that have been waiting 41 years for answers. Let's hear what happened back then.
Oh, I would buy about 200.
March the 27th, Black Thursday they're calling it, the market nosedived. The price dropped to just over $10 an ounce, and the Hunt Syndicate lost well over $2.
To be a little cautious. In my business, I suspect I'm on the overly aggressive side.
For many people, the family silver is their most prized possession. But silver is widely used in industry, in photography, in dentistry and medicine. It's still a monetary metal in many countries. The higher the price, the more it hurts to buy wedding presents, take holiday snaps. Gold might hog the limelight, but silver's always had a special appeal for the speculator. Bunker Hunt's ambition to own all the silver in the world takes more money than even he can muster. The only people with wealth to match are the oil sheikhs. Hunt persuaded a number of Saudi princes to back his play. At first they hesitated, but when the Shah fell in neighboring Iran last year, they rushed in. Henry Kissinger has told brokers in New York privately that some sheikhs reckon they have 5 years before they too are overthrown. So it's prudent to save for exile, and silver and gold keep their value.
I might add to any of the people that I've announced their names. When you see these, see my background when I went kind of scared kid in my 20s and they threw me on a trading floor, whether it was at Merrill Lynch's criminal racket for an internship there. Thank God they didn't give me an offer. That makes sense, actually, when you think about it. They went to Susquehanna. They wanted to train me for a while, and then they threw me in a crowd. So I didn't have a government bailout. I was like, either make money or we're going to get fired. At least that's what I thought. So I had to go there, figure out how to buy low, sell high. I couldn't print money after I lost. Fortunately, I figured it out. So I'm not trying to brag. I'm just saying that I was very intimidated when I went in there. I think the first year, the goal they set for me, my mentor he told me my goal was to make $1,000 a day on average. This was in the American Stock Exchange, 2007. He told me this leading into 2008. So the P&L target would have been $250,000. His boss, my higher up boss, said $400,000. And I made $1.3 million of profit and loss that condition, just buying and selling. So I think I have some credentials to say that. I went in one of these jungles and did it. I understand that I've studied silvers for the last 12, 13 years, whatever it is now. I talked to a lot of people who know a lot. That's why I've offered my services. But now it's not going to be free anymore. But you can hire me if you guys don't understand the history of the silver market. I'll bring some of my friends. Or if you want to go through the discovery process, you can have your lawyer. All the lawyers, Goldman, JP Morgan, CFTC, you're all lawyers. You can tax, maybe we can discuss the $145 trillion of undocumented adjustment that Dr. Mark Skidmore has found from the Pentagon. That nobody, I mean, that's a lot of money, but all the lawyers, no one's bothered to track that down. In fact, they had FASB 56, I hear, which just said that's national security. Oh, okay. CFTC, any of the people I've named, if you and your friends want to meet in a safe place for a discovery process, I'll bring me, or I'll go alone, but I have other experts who I'm sure would be happy to help. But I will go alone. We could compare who knows more in public forum. We could have fun with it. Make it like The Apprentice, you know, it'd be fun. Silver Jeopardy. The governments and the banks against the people who tell the truth and do research. We'll see who wins. Put something on it. Hey, if you guys lose, you can just always print money, cheat, steal more anyway. So, you know, it's all good. I'm going to turn that in. We'll put, actually, you know, I have this campaign here. Here is $13,771 that 3 days it's been pledged to hold the CFTC accountable. All I've asked is for answers to any of these questions. I mean, other people, they put their money because they have the same questions. These are your constituents, Rosten Behnam. Gary Gensler. These are your constituents. You had your turn at the CFTC, turned a blind eye. Do you have any comments on what Bart Chilton said? And then he told people there's nothing wrong. These are safe markets. Now you're going to go run the SEC? It's kind of fitting. We'll hear what Rick Rule has to say about what the SEC did. And he was one of the largest buyers of silver. So someone with, I'm just saying, some influence in the market. All this money would go to the victims of some of the horrific child trafficking that I've been reading about. I bet they could use help. All you got to do is answer these questions. Anyone can answer the questions. I can't figure it out. Asking for help from I'm a citizen. That's what government is for, to help someone. I don't know where. I've not been able to. I've told you. I'm laying my cards on the table, showing you what I'm doing. Not making any of this up. And the reason I'm doing it in this format now is I've been through heck and back. I think these are reasonable questions. That's what you people swear an oath to maintain and protect. Joe Biden what is the answer? Elizabeth Warren, market integrity. What is the answer? Chuck Schumer, what are the answers? Where do I go to get the answers? Coming to Washington. Time you're watching this, I'm probably here. Tuesday, April 20th. I'm going to be outside the CFTC's office. I'll ask for, I'll see if I can, anyone, I'll go to the Fed, Congress, wherever. Somebody let me know. I'm asking for help. So the questions, I'm telling you the people that have contacted, I'm not, if anybody thinks I'm making it up, then let's find a safe courtroom or whatever. I'll go to the discovery process. Anything you want to ask me, I'm offering it. I need to go to court. I'm telling the damn YouTube channel. I sit here and talk about it every night. I don't know what's the. Well, Chris Giancarlo, and he answered a lot. We saw a bubble building, and we thought the best way to address it was allow the market to interact with it. A bubble building. People were buying something, so the price went higher. They bought it, and the price can go higher or lower without a CME future. Bitcoin futures listed by CME and SIBO were announced by CFTC on there. All right. Bitcoin peaked at nearly 20,000 one day earlier, and then they did this. How was Goldman Sachs' position? Which I've seen websites that show, in fact, has anyone looked at Nancy Pelosi's trading records on Bitcoin? Did she know about that before the bubble was popped? Did her husband know about it? Does anybody in Congress, with all the money that is being spent, economic recovery? Okay, if you're going to print $2 trillion for economic recovery, how about cleaning up some of the corruption that you promised? Biden, Trump, Obama, Clinton, Bush, Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny. Hey, here it is. All the money you're printing. That, in fact, if you're going to print money to do anything, I'm sure we can all agree on cleaning up corruption, except for people who are corrupt, right? That's something everybody can support. Who wouldn't be? Who's on favor of that? Okay, so is this true or not? I'm seeing it on this guy, Mike Shedlock. He's putting his name on it. Zero Hedge reporting it, April 14th, the day that Bernie Madoff ironically died. That's what I meant to mention before. Same day I created Silver Industry Integrity Committee. Bernie Madoff died. And there's a lot of these things happening that just seem, but I can't find answers. Did anybody look at Bernie Madoff's trading records in silver? I heard he had silver and gold. I'm sure he gave up everything before he turned himself in. I'm sure he didn't leave anything. I'm sure it's just like the movie. You know, has anybody looked at his silver trading records? Well, I don't know. Can we get access to those? Freedom of Information Act. Can someone tell me Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, and any other politician who has ever claimed to have any interest in cleaning up corruption, please, somebody let me know. What are the plans to examine this? Mike Shedlock, he is not probably taxing people. He's reporting it. There you go. Paul Pelosi exercised call options and paid $1.95 million to buy 15,000 shares. Oh, the guy's an option trader. How ironic. In fact, I was the market maker for Microsoft, or I was one of the market makers. I was not specialist back then. That was 2007, and I traded Microsoft options. It was in the crowd in the Amex. So now Paul Pelosi. Wow, okay, I'm glad I can learn. It's going to be educational. Let's see what Paul did. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband purchased millions of dollars worth of Microsoft and Roblox shares last month, new financial disclosures reveal. Paul exercised call options and paid $1.95 million to buy 15,000 shares at a strike price of $130. By the way, this is a $30 stock. Here, I haven't looked it up recently, but we'll do this blindly. So to prove, let's see. See, you can ask me anything at any point in time here. It's 2007, so that's, what are we in 2000? It's 14 years ago. Microsoft, I remember, it was trading like $25 and $30, like most of the time, and it never moved. I remember I used to joke about how the price never moved. Like 15 years from now, I'd sit there. Although I never anticipated QE 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or any of the other stuff we've seen. So Microsoft, look at that. Oh, $260 a share. I mean, we had computers back in 2000. Well, let's get the chart here. See, I mean, I guess here's the question I'll leave to any of these people, especially the CFTC, based on what you've seen so far. And then you can finish the rest, you watch it. But do you think I'm bluffing yet? That's what I would wonder. Does anybody who's watching this think I'm making this up or bluffing or that? And, you know, if like one day, you know, someone I know gets audited or piano falls on someone or just like some random, or I just disappear. Oh, I wonder if people will notice. Hey, there we go. Look at that. 2007, 29.46. Wow, is this guy good? Rosten Behnam, do you want to ask me for help with silver? I will help you if you ask. Oh, I'll put my hand on a Bible that I didn't doctor this part of the video. And you see, I wasn't making it up because there it is. 2001 is $30. Then here, even through the first couple of rounds of quantitative, and then what happens here? Well, geez, I wonder if that's connected to the money printing. I'm the guy who said 10 years ago the Fed would never raise interest rates. Everybody who lost money in the end of 2018, I think they would say I was right about that. Guys, anyone? Public debate with Ben Bernanke, Jerome Siegel, or Jeremy Siegel, whatever his name, from Wharton. I fell for that shit back in 2004. I mean, I was in his office hours when he said he was being considered as one of the successors to Greenspan. Well, I would have fit right in. So I'll ask these. Wharton, can you answer? Harvard, can you answer? Greg Mankiw was talking about negative interest rates back in 2009. Remember that while I was on the trading floor. I didn't have bailouts. Figured out. Anybody's read Austrian? Ben Bernanke, do you think there's any correlation? Ben Bernanke, can you explain why Microsoft, which sat there, look at this thing, flat as a board. What is this, American productivity? I mean, of all the times, if you told me it spiked it by the internet bubble, okay, that makes sense. We're using more computers. What happened in the last 4 years? Microsoft was $55. So it's a, what's that, 5 bagger in the last 4 years? What did they do? Seems like, I'm not a tech expert. Seems like there's a lot of competition. Is that related to the money printing? Paul seems to be all over this. He seems to understand Microsoft. Can he answer it? Since Paul made the purchase, Microsoft share prices have climbed from 230 to roughly 255, an increase of 11%. After the company secured a lucrative government contract worth nearly $22 billion to supply the U.S. Army combat troops with augmented reality headsets. Oh, well, that answers my question. Okay, they are making more money. We found out what they're selling. Why are U.S. Army combat troops buying augmented reality headset? Why is the U.S. Army combat troops spending $22 billion on augmented reality headsets when we're 28 trillion? Remember the last couple hundred times the debt ceiling was lifted, they said for national security. What is the, for Joe Biden now says people have to stay in Afghanistan. It's September 11th, that was 20 years ago. By the way, I was running from the dust cloud that day too. So I still can't figure out why we've been in Afghanistan. I have a friend though, he got sent there. Joe Biden, would you like to have a debate with and share stories with my friend, his experience in Afghanistan? If I said I could produce other people who have been to Afghanistan who would challenge what any of the people I've named here in this video have said, I don't know, if you're watching home, do you think I'm making that up? Am I bluffing here? Am I just tossing shit out there like I'm a politician on the campaign trail about to steal things? I'm going to say all this if I'm bluffing, if I'm making it up. Or we know I'm not making it up. I'm showing you the evidence. So anybody who's ever said they were, except for Ron Paul, he's the only honest politician I ever met. But anybody else who says deficit anything, there it goes. And now U.S. they got to have the headsets. I'd like a headset. Sounds cool. Paul could probably afford some headsets because he made some bucks. Deal was announced March 31st. Guy bought call options. All right. What is the hearing? This looks extremely bad at the very least, and it's where it's outright corrupt. Okay. We're going to have a hearing like Oliver North. So when we were telling everybody that Iran was the terrorist and they were, I can't keep it straight. Were they sending the guns, the cocaine, or what was being sent there? Does anybody remember the Boland Amendment? Look that one up. Oliver North, if he's still alive, can you explain the Boland Amendment or any of your behavior? I just read a book about the Bush crime family. What was the name of it? Bush crime family, I think was the name of the book. I don't know. Match what I've read. Can anybody explain that there? I was running from the dust cloud. I have questions about that. Can anybody explain those? And I know that YouTube censors when you talk about things like this, so I'm risking my business on the line to speak the truth today, but that's okay. Nancy Pelosi is already a very wealthy woman. She's a congressman, a public servant. How's she so damn rich? Well, and can she start a trade? I explained my credentials, Susquehanna International Group. They keep a low profile. Apologize to those guys. Sorry, but that's my background. I was trained there. I can't figure out how Paul's such a great trader or Nancy's so rich. I mean, the appearance of this is so disgusting. I'd agree. Doesn't look good. Well, we'll come back to the Hunt brothers. They didn't even get to the... It's Donald Rumsfeld.
Must do more.
September 10th.
We must develop and build weapons to deter those new threats. We must rebuild our infrastructure, which is in a very serious state of disrepair. And we must assure that the noble cause of military service remains the high calling that will attract the very best. All this costs money. It costs more than we have. It demands agility, more than today's bureaucracy allows. And that means we must recognize another transformation. The revolution in management, technology, and business
Who do you think is a bigger
practices.
threat to your country? This
Successful
man or
modern
the terrorist?
businesses are leaner and less hierarchical than ever before.
Or who's who?
They reward innovation and they share information. They have to be nimble in the face of rapid change or they die.
Just wait, what do you hear what he was doing?
Business enterprises die if they fail to adapt. And the fact that they can fail and die is what provides the incentive to survive. But governments can't die. So we need to find other incentives for bureaucracy to adapt and improve. The technology revolution has transformed organizations across the private sector, but not ours, not fully.
We just found out how Microsoft is helping.
Not yet. We are, as they say, tangled in our anchor chain. Our financial systems are decades old. According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
That's what he said September 10th. At least what I read on the internet. I'm a big conspiracy theorist, but wow, by the way, I'm proud to be the 11,000th 111 view. A lot of ones, 11 ones. Well, at least the conspiracy stuff I watch on the internet. A lot of people who say that the group that would have been responsible for that audit was the section of the Pentagon that got blown up. Don, I'm going to be in Washington on April 20th. I'll stand there. I'm not armed. Hands in the air. Want to talk? Have you figured out where the money went yet? Swore an oath. Anybody? ArcadiaEconomics.com. You can message through there, or you just I'll be there. I will be there peacefully. I don't carry weapons, or I won't carry any weapons. I won't do anything illegal like you. Any of these people. Tuesday, April 20th. I will be in front of the CFTC's headquarters. At least unless can't imagine if I'm just sitting there in a public location. If any, I don't know, unless someone asks me to move, but I'll have my camera there to document it. If any news channel wants to see if I maintain, I've only advocated, I'm just gonna be there peaceful. I don't endorse anything else. Just gonna stand there with some signs and that's all where I'm gonna be. I don't know who'll show up, but I'm gonna be there peacefully asking if I'll be there to see if I can find anyone in Washington that can answer these questions. Aaron Russo couldn't, and I think he's a real, he couldn't, this guy, Aaron Russo, he couldn't even find anyone in the IRS who could show us the law that taxes is a mandatory, where they couldn't show the law. They said they don't even care about the Supreme Court decisions. Watch Freedom to Fascism sometime, Don, and you'll understand why people care about this silver thing. So here you go. They launched a Bitcoin future to pop the bubble. By the way, how well did that work out, buddy? There it is, $55,000 today. So how do we know when Goldman Sachs is going to feel it's necessary to pop the Bitcoin bubble? It's grown bigger. And where'd you learn all this? And could the same thing happen in silver if anything that I'm saying here is true? I don't know. People ask me these questions. So let's finish. Let's finish the end of Silver Thursday here. What's been going on is people have been pissed off since back in the 80s or even before. I'm here in Austin. I'll ask around, see if I can understand why LBJ took silver out of the coins. I've read about a London gold pool. Why did Nixon take us off the dollar? Bernanke doesn't understand it yet. I think the dollar. So wait a second. You created a Fed. A decade after that, for the good of national security, people had to sell their gold to the Fed, or they were the criminals. They were the terrorists, the speculators. So Fed, the banks, same guys that rip everything off. We have Goldman Sachs. I mean, how many trials? I mean, we put them on Congress. The same thing. I'm reporting it now. Can't get an answer from any of them. That's who the Fed is, those banks. Then government used legislation to get people, to force people or to threaten them to put them in jail if they didn't give their gold to the Fed, who says the price is $21. And a couple years later, it's $35. Hey, I know people might be saying, well, what is he talking about the Fed? It was the Treasury. Hey, I just saw a video on YouTube. They said that the people had to sell their gold to the Fed. And no, I have time to look that up. I'm a little busy. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's any of the people I've asked can answer those questions. Well, why can't you audit Fort Knox? Think I have some credentials in the silver industry? Andy Scheckman, he puts his name and face. He'll tell you about his audit procedures. Andrew McGuire, CFTC whistleblower 10 years ago. Told you all this. He put his name and face, said he told the Department of Justice, and then they said 10 years ago, but what about the economic fallout? So they covered it up. Everybody covered it up. Just like the SEC covered up the stuff with Bernie Madoff. And we can put suits and costumes and paint fucking clown noses on people and like pretend we're all oblivious, stick our fucking heads in the sand, silence me, come fucking zap me or whatever. It's not going to change it. You covered it up.
The New York Silver.
Yeah, that's where I was. That was my background. So do whatever you want. Put my name and face on it.
It is where the big players like Bunker Hunt stake their millions. With his own fortune now linked to Saudi billions, Hunt was the biggest player of all. When Hunt started buying silver in earnest in January 1979, the price was a little over $6 an ounce. Hunt watchers...
But keep in mind, all these conspiracy theorists who said gold, silver, gold, silver, gold, silver. Nixon took us off 35, 42 because they were getting a gold drain. It's now 1,700, 1,800, whatever it is today. It's been over 2,000, and you have to use a massive rigging campaign to keep it even that low. And I say that to every person that I've named in this video. LBMA, you too. CNBC, you too. CNN, you too. So you see that, you know, I mean, it's like trying to suppress the beach ball underwater. It's going to come up. It already has. All right, silver, there it was, $6.24. I would say that anybody that I've ever met, challenge my credentials. Come on, anybody, challenge them. Maybe I'm not even bullshitting about silver. But anyone that I've ever met that actually understands anything the Fed's doing, the more scared they get, they buy silver. So they're all batshit crazy idiots. And hey, I mean, I'm confused. I'm asking these questions. We can't figure it out. So we're all just stupid. Or anyone who said gold was right. Hey, I mean, we're finding out. LBMA just told us why. Anyone who understands the Fed, they buy silver. Rosten Behnam, I mean, we can play it again. He said how scared he was. Tamp it down. Tamp what down? People buy it. The fuck does he care? Buy it, the price goes up. Microsoft didn't have the price go up. Pelosi's husband, the guy's buying call options. Fucking Warren Buffett over there. No investigation. Rosten Behnam launches an investigation. Then on arguably the single greatest day of demand, at least by the ETF standards. All right, let's probably bullshitting here. Am I making it up? Let's see. Oh, I'm just looking at the numbers I look. There's 3 spikes. Those are the 3 days in question, 29th, 1st, and 2nd. Here's the 2nd. That spike. So you see that's right under 60. This is primarily SLV. There are other trusts, but we can look at it. I'll go to the discovery process and talk about SLV's data. Wait till you see what I told the CFTC, what they've been sitting on. So if anybody lost money with silver, we'll get to what they've been sitting on. We'll cover it. So here's February 2nd. The day price fell 10% of silver. So we'll back this out a little bit. So here's 6 months. So over the last 6 months, the day the price of silver fell 10%, that's still, this is how many shares were added. I called SLV and said, when shares are added, does that mean that, because I want to be clear, I tell everybody I have a show. I'm just trying to report it honestly. These are my questions. She said, no, the shares are added that day. They're not working the order. They're not, I might add, this was February 5th. She didn't mention anything about the prospectus changes they did February 3rd, which I wonder, given the questions that I asked and I've reported on publicly and put my name and face to, does that make her an accomplice to this crime? Whoever called there. I left my phone number for a couple other guys I talked to last week at SLV. See if I hear back from them. No one's calling me. Phone don't ring, man. Okay. So they changed the prospectus in the middle of the night. They didn't tell anyone about it. I asked how they let their investors know. Said, well, it was the new file was there. Did you give any notification? Ronan Manley took hours out of his time to do it. So there's that it was 61 million in SLV they claimed to have added. Actually, here's the SLV data. This is what I'm looking at. I mean, it could be wrong. I had to actually ask a friend of mine who runs a business, has a large mining stock portfolio that he didn't, use legislation to buy call options to end up with. To ask him for the data, because on SLV, the file that shows this doesn't work on a Mac. I called and asked. You can call and ask for yourself. Just saying. But anyway, so, I had to have that guy, Doug. So, I mean, maybe these numbers are wrong. I'm happy to discuss them with anyone. Here's January 28th. That was the Thursday. So January 27th, that's when GameStop at least kind of went nuts, I believe. Then 28th, people were thinking about it. Then 29th, silver rallied a little bit. So here's, before that big day on the Friday, you have 610 million ounces. Then look at this. February 1st, at the end of February 1st, there's 667. And by the end of February 2nd, there is 729. So we'll see. Just so in case anyone thinks I'm making up the numbers, we'll use Microsoft. Hey, they're billing the Pentagon. So hopefully Microsoft makes this stuff. At 61 million ounces were added. With all that demand, here's a chart of silver February 2nd. Here's JP Morgan, of all people, who's supposedly guarding the silver, and no one seems to be checking. I'll put my hand on the Bible or whatever you want me to do. Say that I called iShares and told them this doesn't look good, and they couldn't answer it. But here's JP Morgan, February 2nd, 4:59 before the market opens, downgrading the whole sector. Elizabeth Warren? What's the other guy's name? Sarbanes-Oxley, whatever the other guy's name was passing legislation 10 years ago. They'll fade together. Everybody look at that? Rosten Behnam, did you look at that? That helped. February 12th, whistleblower office. I had a lot to do that day. I remember being really tired, and I found out it was like, holy Christ, lawyers take a long time to do stuff. I appreciate the guy's help. I'm just saying I was tired because I spent a lot of time. Here, put my name on it. I reported it. Based on particular investigation, he alone is personally undertaken. I didn't tax people to do it. It's JP Morgan, custodian, BlackRock. There's a prospectus link. I'll put the links for you. JP Morgan. Here's one for the CFTC. When I called iShares on February 5th, and they said that the metals ad that day, I said, who does that? They said the custodian. I asked, who is that? They said JP Morgan. Ads it that day. I'm like, JP Morgan, I didn't realize at that time that they were the custodian for the other silver trust too. They have a big pile in the COMEX. Nobody seems to be watching it. They were fined $1 billion last year. No investors have been compensated that I know of. I asked her, I'm like, does that seem like a conflict of interest to you? And she couldn't answer. She's like, hey, I can't legally answer. Okay. Rosten, have you asked that? Given that the JP Morgan would have been responsible for adding those 61 million ounces, that have a former professional auditor. You can watch the show. I've talked to everyone in the silver industry. No one believes that they actually added 61. I don't know. How do they do it while the price fell 10%? Did this sell report help? Keep in mind, a day later, they changed the prospectus. They didn't tell anyone. And then they sent Jeff Curry. We'll get to what Jeff Curry of Goldman Sachs, authorized participant of that trust. It's in my second round of submissions. Took me a week later to catch Goldman Sachs lying on camera. I've contacted CNBC. I let them know that Goldman Sachs sends their guy out to lie on their channel. I've sent a lot of stuff to CNBC. They reported on JP Morgan last year, so I followed up. Sent the information. I think it's relevant. There's some people who think it's relevant. We'll see if they care. Let's see if they care. Jeff Curry of Goldman Sachs lied. Or if he didn't lie, then he's pretty damn ignorant, because maybe that's why price of silver fell 10% on arguably the single most greatest demand of history, at least according to those reports. Gates Hurand. That was the name given to me. Someone from the CFTC called Yaram. It's a follow-up with that guy. Called him. He puckered up pretty quickly once I started asking some of these questions. Hey, did you guys look at it? He's a lawyer. When I mentioned that I can't get answers to any of these questions, he wouldn't give in. And then I mentioned that I'm beginning legal action. He said, "Wait, have you created legal action?" I said, "I'm preparing it. I hope I don't have to." I told him, "Look, if you want to maintain the mission statement, I'll be your best friend. I'm just gonna report the truth." As soon as I said that, he's like, "I can't talk to you." Gates, you can tell me if you'd like to challenge what I described there. You're a lawyer. I'm not. Gates, do you have an answer to this? Do you think that what was the basis for JP Morgan's downgrade? They didn't say in this article. Shares slid. Strategists at JP Morgan's crime gang tactically downgraded. Saying timing doesn't look good. I wonder if that affected the price. There's JP Morgan's own crap data. 61 million ounces added. Price fell 10%, somewhere around here. If you look at the timestamp, I wonder if did the authorized participants know that downgrade was going to be issued? Market Watch, Jack Denton. I've heard he's new to silver. I didn't get to check his credentials, but someone on Twitter said that he'd never covered silver before, and then in the span of a couple of days, all of a sudden he's a silver squeeze expert, and he's publishing that. Who knew that was going to be published? Have those trading records been checked? Hey, did Paul Buffett Pelosi, did he have any call options on that one? Jeff Christian, did any of your clients have positions, or did they know about it? Gary Cohn, Steve Mnuchin, Goldman and the gang. Did you guys know? I didn't know. I was long, in fact. Check my trading record. See if I'm bullshitting or I lie when I say these things. I actually made a lot of money on February 1st. But because I understood, I got clobbered on the second. See, I didn't know whether it's like a takeover. It's some percentage. Hey, maybe it gets overrun. They had to commit a bunch of felonies, but I'll make it back though. I'm sure in the United States of America, someone cares about any of this or can answer these questions. But that's all right. Is okay. So back to there you're going to see one. This is the 1 year chart. Just show if this is significant. That's February 2nd. By far the biggest in a year. In fact, except for if you hadn't had the 34 million added the Friday before, it's triple what you see. There was a big one here. I reported on that. Didn't see any comment from the CFTC on that. Let's go back. Let's go 2 years. See if maybe it's like small in context. Nope. That 61 still looks pretty big. I have bullion dealers that they couldn't handle all the orders. They were catching up for days. So that's a physical market. If anyone wants to challenge my data there, arcadiaeconomics.com, send a message. Here's 5 years. There's 10 years. So that February 2nd was the biggest by a mile. So you have back in 2013, there was a day where close to 20. So basically, except for the Friday before, it basically tripled the historical record. Here's 10 years. Here's 20 years out. And February 2nd stands the test. Let's see if Jeff Curry of Goldman Sachs can explain it.
Well, I think when we look at the silver market, the one thing to keep in mind, it is a lot larger than these equity markets. You know, you put the total amount of open interest.
And pause that there so you can see Jeff Curry, Goldman Sachs, global head of commodities, silver runs. They posted this February 2nd. This is as the price is falling. Look. I mean, I understand Rosten Behnam probably hasn't worked on a trading floor. It's not an easy place to survive. Take someone who's able to make it through some serious stuff between you and me, and to walk out with your integrity rather than selling it. So I understand if Ross hasn't been to a trading floor and knows that often you see monitors everywhere, the sound's not on. So it looks like, hey, Goldman Sachs talking, silver rally runs into a roadblock. What was the roadblock, Ross? Where were you tamping down? What were you afraid of? LBMA says that some of their risk managers are saying, hey, you guys can't short as much paper. So the paper supply dried up, the price ran up. But what was the need to tamp down? I don't understand that. I don't understand how. Okay, let's see if there's any farther. 20 years out. Okay, the damn trust, SLV, was only created 2006. So here, February 2nd blows away. It's the biggest day in the history of the trust. Price fell 10%. And here's Jeff. So let's see what Jeff had to say.
A lot larger than these equity markets. You know, you put the total amount of open interest of silver, including both above ground and below ground, you know, somewhere in that two.
Open interest, how is that determined? The banks can write as many contracts as they want. It's not like the equity markets where they have to locate a borrow. So there's no, that doesn't exist in commodities. But hey, you can check the tape. I could be bullshitting all this. maybe I'm not making any sense today. So I don't know. I think they're not making any sense. You decide if you're watching, decide feels right to you.
$100 billion range on an annual output basis. You know, that is substantially larger. And as a result,
Jeff, I will challenge your numbers in court because they're not even close to anything I've ever heard.
To corner the market.
In fact, I've double checked some of your calculations between what you say in your different interview appearances. They don't even come close to adding up. So you might want to check your numbers, buddy.
And create a short squeeze. We estimate it require each one of these Wall Street individuals.
Outfitting. And pull this up. Bernie Madoff right next to Jeff. Here's 12 hours we did. 80,000 people watched it. Silver Comex delivery update. Goldman Jeff Curry. Watch that one. Plenty of talking there. You can hear how people feel.
To accumulated positions of somewhere around 4,200 ounces. That's a lot of silver. And where are you going to put
Jeff,
it?
can you explain now while you're saying that the same exact day, record edition, that's a lot of silver demand.
Thursday, silver Thursday, I think, are far stretched.
Legend.
And also,
Goldman Sachs, you're going on TV, running your mouth, lying.
There are
Can you explain any of these questions? I called Goldman. I asked to speak to you. How do I get Jeff as my broker? I can't figure this stuff out. Okay.
To see a similar,
because then, so in between when Jeff says that on February 2nd, on the day records are set of silver demand, and February 3rd, Jeff is not on TV because the prospectus for SLV is quietly, without fanfare. I called iShares the other day, asked them how they notify their customers or any people who are buying it. These, all right, so you know there's a lot of social media warriors, keyboard thumpers out there. How'd you let them know that you changed the rules? What did they do? SLV quiet. They can't answer that. If anybody gets an answer, please let me know. I couldn't. But SLV quietly, without fanfare. Rona Manley, fortunately, was tracking it. They stated they changed this. So you just saw what Jeff said. That was February 2nd. And February 3rd, Jeff's not on TV because he's an authorized, Goldman Sachs is an authorized participant. That means they signed off on this. They're the ones who buy or can add or redeem baskets for JP Morgan to allegedly put the metal in. What they say on February 3rd? Demand for silver may temporarily exceed available supply that is acceptable for delivery to the trust, which may adversely affect investment in the shares. To the extent that the demand for silver exceeds the available supply, wouldn't the price just go up if this is a free market in the United States? Ross, you didn't explain it. We're only a couple. We didn't even finish Ross's clip yet. Authorized participants. That's Goldman Sachs. That's Jeff Curry's gang. May not be able to readily acquire sufficient amounts of silver. Jeff, you want to take another? You want to take an amendment to that? I can go to what you said on February 4th. I could keep lawyers busy for decades covering your appearances. Hey, here's what he said.
For retail investors to force a squeeze in something like silver and the differences between cornering a commodity versus squeezing a stock. But I remember 10 years ago, there was a moment when GLD, the gold ETF, had more assets in it in dollar terms than the SPY. And I do think that GLD was moving the price of gold. I can imagine a similar situation with silver and the silver ETF if people get excited enough about it, where what happens in the markets ends up influencing what happens with the actual metal in real life. You're saying you don't think that that's a possibility?
I mean, you're talking 900 million ounces in the ETF versus a 25 billion ounce market.
Each false information right off the bat. At least the interviewer, he asked the question everybody else has, and Jeff didn't say, this is now February 4th. See, look, that's February 4th. You heard what he said February 2nd, and here's what he did and didn't tell anybody about on February 3rd. And he has the audacity to go and lie on TV since then. But when you call Goldman Sachs, they won't answer this. Won't deny it. They won't explain it. Rosty, are you waiting to spring your trap? Let me know so I can be there for the history. I wrote this up for you. You're not just hearing this now. I've called you and left you messages. I told you I'm getting tired of waiting. Tired of hearing people pissed off for the last 41 years. They ask me the questions. I have to do your job to clean up this shit. Here, authorized participants may not be able to readily acquire sufficient amounts of silver. That's what Jeff Curry's bank said. Here he is lying about it. What are you going to do about that, Ross?
Ends up influencing what happens with the actual metal in real life. You're saying you don't think that that's a possibility?
I mean, you're talking 900 million ounces in the ETF versus a 25 billion ounce market. And by the way,
but those billion ounces don't move.
See, Jeff, even the guy interviewing you realized you were lying. You can see it on the damn tape.
But the silver market,
they just
and
sit.
then you go on.
They just sit. Those other ounces just sit. They don't move.
Right, but I mean, you look at the flows going in and out of these ETFs, they're not that big. But I guess my question is...
That's a lie. That's a felony. Not that big. It was record-setting. Here's what you said the day before you made that lie. The trust may suspend or restrict issuance of the baskets. You fucking kidding me? You're a felon, Jeff. You're a fucking joke.
ETF, in terms of thinking about how are you going to create a squeeze, the shorts are the ETFs. The ETFs buy the physical, they turn around and they sell on the COMEX to be able to hedge that physical position.
Hear that again. Shorts are the ETFs. He explained it all.
ETFs buy the physical, they turn around and they sell on the COMEX to be able
Wait. If the fund is just a trust, you're just taking money and people want to buy silver. What are you shorting? Goldman Sachs, someone in the legal department. I called you. I warned you. You want to stop sending this guy out. He gives...
hedge that physical position like any other corporate. It's
Right.
not a naked
No.
short like in an equity.
Not like any other corporate. I've never heard of any other corporate aside from Goldman Sachs that hedges like that.
Like in an equity. But here's the main reason why I don't think it's possible to squeeze one of these markets like what the Hunt brothers did in 1980. You got position limits in these markets, and they've gotten tighter.
Oh, yeah? So Jeff says the reason it can't happen is because of the position limits. Seriously? You really going to go with that, buddy? Really? Here's the position limits. This is the CFTC site. Here's the position limit for derivatives. This is the CFTC site. Scroll down here. Silver 3,000, gold 6,000. Sounds great. Except here's gold deliveries. It's Goldman Sachs, 8,900. It's issuing, their house account. That means they had to deliver. So that means they were short. They had to deliver. These guys, Jeff's bank was short when he said that. Goldman Sachs, if your legal team needs help with this, let me know. There's 79, there's the customer account going over the limit. I called the CME to ask them to explain this to me because I couldn't get it. They said it's either they have a hedge exemption or they're in a violation. I said, how do investors know? That's not public. Can you confirm that? All right. Called the day after this happened. Can you confirm that someone has at least checked to know the difference between the two? Couldn't confirm that. Who's monitoring that? He tells me it's CFTC. It doesn't make me feel particularly better. There you go. It is possible the authorized participants, Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan are authorized participants, may be unable to acquire sufficient silver that is acceptable. So Jeff, you lied. You're a liar. Just like everybody else at your shithole bank.
To be able to hedge that physical position like any other corporate. It's
Right.
not a naked short like in an equity. But here's the main reason why I don't think it's possible to squeeze one of these markets like what the Hunt brothers did in 1980. You got position limits in these markets.
Okay, and you violate the position limits. In fact, there you go. You're short metal. So, and you told us you even though it's a trust and there's no economic justification I or anybody in the history of finance can figure out what you're shorting on the COMEX when you're an authorized participant of a trust that holds metal for people. Yeah, let's look at silver. This will be fun. Let's look. Oh, look at this. 2909. So that was the March report. That means Goldman Sachs was short silver. There you go, Jeff. If there's any legal justice in this country, have fun explaining that in a courtroom. Disgusting. There you go. March deliveries. That means they were short. I said that. House account. It's not the clients. Or are they reporting fraudulent data to the CME? Or JP Morgan got caught doing that. Let's see what JP Morgan did that month. Good old JP Morgan monitoring. Oh, look at that. They're active in silver. All right, customer. So they took some, or actually February. Well, here's JP Morgan going over the limit. There's a 48 burger. Here's what happened February 3rd. Here's what the man says February 4th. Rosten opens investigation February 1st. I've submitted the evidence. Let's hear the end of what he's got to say.
What could have been a much worse situation in the silver markets?
Could have been a much worse situation for who? People bought. The price goes up. Stock market, price goes soaring. And if it drops, we get more printed money. Bitcoin is flying. Everything is flying. Money printing is flying. But if silver goes up, it's an international. We got a rigged market. You confirmed it, Ross. I'll be outside your office, 10 a.m., April 20th. Tell me what I'm missing.
And I think it's important to distinguish what an equity space with what happened in our markets, in the future space, specifically with the silver contract. And in many respects, the resiliency and the market structure of the futures market really.
Where the LBMA confirmed that because their risk manager was so damn concerned because so many people were buying silver. The LBMA is reporting this, not me. They said they reined it in. So the paper supply came in and the price went up. Now they said, well, we don't have to worry about that again because no one else would ever think about looking into this again. We'll see about that.
were able to tamp down what could have been a much worse situation in the silver markets. And
worse situation? What does that mean? Worse, if price goes up, what do you care? Why is it not a worse situation when the price of treasuries goes up? They print money to fund it. That's not a worse situation. But silver, it's a worse situation if the price goes up after people buy. Explain that, Rosti.
Just pointing to a couple things that I've observed over the past couple of weeks.
Please.
And I shared with my colleagues within the U.S. government, and that are either unique.
What are the chances the evidence that I submitted to you on multiple rounds is anything in those conversations?
To many respects to the equity space entirely. We have sort of history and precedent in the future space. You know, we have a match order book, don't have rules. We have T+1 settlement, the clearing infrastructure as a general.
Month and a half to think about it. You're really getting to the important shit now, man.
Historically within the future space is built in and very strong initial margin, daily mark to market, position limits, all of these things together.
You got 312 views. Let's look at my let's look at my shit. There you go. 80,000 views about Jeff Curry. And you go on a channel that has 312. By the way, so it had 78 views when I started commenting on it. So most of the views are because of my damn channel. From people who are really pissed off. They pledged their money to get you to do your job, Rosten Behnam. There you go. What are we up to now? We'll click refresh. All right, $200. Voluntary. That's not tax. It's not by force.
I think really we're very in managing what was at some point in those few days in late January potentially a challenging situation, and give credit to the.
What does that mean, a challenging situation? People buy, the price goes up. Challenging for who? The banks? Here's another Ronen Manley article. Can we get Ronen, the commissioner of the CFTC? Can you call him? Here, look at what Ronen found. Here's in the SIVR prospectus. I think JP Morgan's involved with them too. February 2nd. They actually put in their own prospectus an online campaign to harm hedge funds and large banks with substantial short exposures to silver. So anyone whose name is associated with SIVR Aberdeen confirmed that the hedge funds and large banks have a substantial short exposure to silver. So let's be clear about that. Campaign encourages retail investors to purchase physical silver in order to eventually create a short squeeze. It's bullshit. What are you worried about? What's Rosten so worried about? This activity could result in temporarily inflated price of the share, and the difference between trading price may widen. Possible short squeeze due to sudden increase in demand. So here's what you don't tell people. You try and stick it so that they can't see it, so that when you lie to their face, you can get away with it. Well, I'm not that stupid. But I could be bluffing. So, I mean, maybe I'm making all this up and I don't have any more evidence. Or I don't have anything in place. I told you where I'll be. Maybe the answer of how you're going to spring your trap on these felons is coming. Finish it.
For utilizing
what you said, the CFTC said 41
has within the margin space to control the sort of the margin, daily mark to market, position limits, all of these things together, I think really were very in managing what was at some point in those few days in late January potentially a challenging.
You managed a challenging situation. You rigged the
very
price.
Strong.
You're just so stupid and arrogant. You admitted
very
it.
Strong initial margin, daily mark to market, position limits.
You're the lawyer. Give me a break.
All of these is built in, and very strong initial margin, daily mark to market, position limits. All of these things together, I think, really were very in managing what was at some point in those few days in late January potentially a challenging situation, and give credit to the for utilizing its authority and some of the tools it has within the margin space to control the sort of the price and the volatility of the silver contracts. But I think all those things together are important elements markets that both sort of transparency, resiliency, credibility, as we talked.
You've got some audacity
about in the sustainability space that make our markets very, very resilient and strong. And we are keeping an eye on it. I've worked with the division directors across to make sure that we're, uniquely looking at the clearing space, the intermediary space, and the exchange space to make sure that the rules and regs we have on the books are going to be able to approach and manage this new technology and sort of new front in our market space. That all said, and you mentioned this, the larger policy question for me is about retail access and retail market participants. If you think about where we are today, vis-a-vis 12 months ago or 13 months ago when the pandemic really kicked in, we have individuals at home utilizing technology with cash and in trading in markets. We're seeing in the equity space, and we're certainly seeing a kick up in the futures market as well. To your point, I agree. Having more access, having more participants is a good thing for many reasons, but we're leveraged markets. We have to be mindful of the guardrails, measures, and the type of access and the type of intermediation that's happening. This is not a traditional, pit trading as it was decades ago. This is a simple downloading an app on your phone.
We'll get to the similarities between decades ago because it's actually incredibly similar.
Connecting it to a pool of money at a bank account or otherwise, and then having access to trade leverage markets in the matter of hours. And those are the...
So that's like when you see Robinhood restrict buys to screw the retail people, stuff like that. Why was it for national security restrict purchases of First Majestic silver? Yeah, can anybody in any of these institutions explain that one to me?
Types of things that I'm thinking about, because we want the investors to have a level of education.
No. You went out of your way to guarantee that they wouldn't have it. So let's be clear about that.
Certainly around our market, understanding the risks that are associated with it, certainly because they are leveraged, certainly the disclosure element, making sure all the information is out so that the individual will know risks that he or she.
All right, my information's out there and you sat on it. You're still sitting on it. Everyone in your office is sitting on it, and everyone at these banks is sitting on it. I've called them, every single one. And now I'm coming to your office on Tuesday, 10 a.m. We'll see how transparent you are. We'll find out. Giving you another chance. Tell me what I'm missing.
Is taking when they allocate capital or when they invest in our markets.
Yeah.
Certainly from a risk management, this is a great way access for investors, but we have to be the way technology is changing and evolving, and we have to change with that. We can't rely on our old rule book or old way of doing business, because the world has changed, investors have changed, access to information that they collect, via the internet or otherwise, or chat rooms has changed, and we need to be mindful of that. So those are the types of things I'm thinking about. I want to be open and fair and transparent,
no, you don't.
But I also want the disclosures and the guardrails to be that are strong, are very clear, so that investors know what they're getting involved in. And quite frankly, that there are going to be certain individuals who shouldn't be trading in our market yet, or at least they need to reach some level of education or understand risks of a leveraged market before they start putting their money in our markets.
Well, let's take a look at how much things have changed. That's a good question. Let's take a look at that. So I mentioned former Commissioner Bart Chilton a couple of times. Certainly what he said was quite stunning. I've never had anyone from the CFTC follow up with that, but take a listen for yourself.
I ended up being the only commissioner, there were 5 commissioners at the CFTC, who felt like it was a responsibility to do so. Matter of fact, the other commissioners all got those emails blocked from their computers, which I found pretty disappointing. The market participants, those in the U.S. especially, but even others, should have regulators be accountable to them. And so
they should have regulators be accountable to them, but be clear that the period that Commissioner Chilton's talking about here, this is the same time period where last year, the same CFTC said they found hundreds of thousands of occasions. Maybe they would have found it earlier if the other commissioners hadn't been blocking the evidence. But the CFTC didn't tell you about that. I had to go ask Bart Chilton. Do you want to know what else they didn't tell you? Along the lines of that meeting, I was actually watching one of the videos again the other day, and I know between Jeff Christian and Adrian Douglas, they were disputing whether the metal is actually there to back the paper claims, whether via contracts on the COMEX or derivatives. Curious your thoughts. It seems to me like we're in a situation where we now have a fractional banking system in the metals. From what you've seen, is there actually metal in existence that these claims could be fulfilled, or is there an imbalance in there somewhere?
there's never, in silver, in soybeans, in oil, there's never enough physical to back up all of the contracts, the futures contracts. Never is.
Well, there you go. I mean, but hey, I know Jeff Christian says this is all conspiracy theory, so let's see what he said at that meeting.
People will say, well, and you've heard it today, there's not that much physical metal out there. There isn't. But in the physical market, as the market uses that term, there is much more metal than that. There's 100 times what there is. If I look at the Florida,
So as usual, when Jeff talks, things aren't very clear, but I think you get the idea. Although you mentioned that there were many other things you saw that did raise the alarm. Anything that you can get into, again, while respecting the confidentiality with the agency, but some of the things that you did see that raised your attention?
Well, there's some stuff that's out there in the public that I'm not sure everybody, put together. Most people did. I would never, for example, and I won't now, say that, there was a bank and name it that held, close to 40% of the silver market at one point. But the news reports, people surmise it's JP Morgan Chase, and the news reports in the public record showed that when Bear Stearns collapsed, that their silver positions got transferred over to JP Morgan. Mm-hmm. And we, the CFTC, had to approve those positions because those positions, the layman positions, the Bear Stearns positions, the Bear Stearns positions, when they came over, combined with JP's positions, were so large that they violated the position limits on which one trader could hold. So the CFTC had to approve that JP could take on the Bear silver positions. So people want to do the math, they can do the math on who had the largest silver. But there was an exception there that we made, and that's in the public record. What's not really looked at too much is that we made that allowance for a time certain, and I forget exactly how long it was, but it was not years. It was, months. Maybe it was 3 months or 6 months, or maybe it was 9 months. I think it was probably 6, but I don't recall. And that allowance was for them to be able to get out of those positions. Right. Well, one thing we didn't know right at first is that there was the head silver trader for Bear. He went with the silver positions to JP, and so he's trading at JP. And after this time was coming to an end, the runway which we had given for them to get out of the positions in excess of position limits, they were nowhere close to getting out of them. Matter of fact, at one point, they'd bought even more.
Keep in mind, this is right when silver was falling from 21 to 9 in the midst of investment banks falling, epic money printing, so much silver buying that there was a physical shortage. So the price goes down to $9, but you can't buy any silver. Sound familiar? And here it is when JP Morgan took over the position that was over the limit. They were supposed to make it smaller. They got a waiver to make it bigger. Is that what they're doing with the hedge exemptions they're getting from the CMA now? Was this material information? Bart said they didn't tell anyone about it. It wasn't in the public record. He said part of it was in the public record, but the rest wasn't. Is that material information to silver investors? So when Rosten Behnam talks about transparency, does it seem a little disingenuous to you too? We hear a lot about big short position, big long positions. What's the difference? What's Bart Schulden have to say about that?
For folks who might be a little bit newer to it, can you explain why the big concentrated position is something that the CFT looks for and is on the watch for to be careful about, and how that impacts the market or has the potential to impact the market?
Well, I mean, if you and I are trading in the futures markets, for a personal account, nobody's going to notice. But if you've got a sizable position and you trade that sizable position, it's one thing if you just have it, but if you're trading it, that, all of a sudden 20% of the market goes long or goes short, that can move markets.
Has Rosten Behnam and the CFTC checked if that happened on February 2nd this year? Because in a minute, I'll show you the evidence that I provided that shows that it has. So keep in mind, Gary Gensler was heading the CFTC back in the investigation Bart's been going over here that ended in 2013. They said they couldn't find anything. Let's just be clear on what actually happened, because the CFTC didn't tell you this. Bart said it on my channel, but the CFTC, which has the audacity to claim transparency, look what else it didn't tell you.
But I can tell you, things were suspect, and the investigation that we did uncovered a lot of evidence that would lead to a manipulation case or an attempted manipulation case. But the standard of evidence, the cumulative standard of evidence, was a very high bar. And so while we did have evidence, direct evidence, voicemail evidence, text evidence, trading evidence, at some point we had price movement evidence, but we never had all of the things that you needed together in one place that were enough for us to go after. There were just holes, and it was frustrating. And we looked at it a bunch of different ways, and at one point we even thought we had enough to go forward with the case, and we asked for some forensic economists outside of the CFTC to examine it, and they came back and they said, "No, we don't think so." And that was after about 4 years, by the way. I've never talked about this. That was after about 4 years. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. We thought we had enough evidence, and we hire somebody outside, and they say we don't have enough evidence? Let's go to somebody else. So people don't know this part, but I extended the investigation yet another year because I didn't believe it. And so we went to yet another forensic economist and had them look at it, and they came back with the opinion of the first folks that we didn't have the traders and we didn't have the market participants dead to rights, but we had lots of stuff, and we had real stuff that would have played really well in court, not just numbers, but the rhetoric, the banter between traders that we had. And I'm not saying there was lots of it, but there was enough of it that it was damning. But the damning part had to be backed up by other requirements of evidence under the law. And we didn't get all of that. We didn't get to that. it troubled me so much, by the way, that I did seek a change in the law, and we ultimately got it. And we have there's a newer, lower standard for manipulation that's been in place since that time. It was not retroactive. A lower standard of manipulation for the CFTC, which is similar to the SEC's standard for manipulation, or one of their standards. I think it's their 10b-5 standard, which is based upon recklessness. So instead of having these 4 different hurdles that I was describing earlier that were pretty high for us to get over, the new standard that I fought for, and Marie Cantwell was the champion in the Senate and in Congress on this, by the way, although there were others, Bernie Sanders, etc., but Marie Cantwell was the real champion. That now there's a lower manipulation standard, one that would be easier to prove. Would the same evidence back then result in a charge and a potential conviction on manipulation? I think so.
If anybody knows anybody who knew about that, aside from this interview, but who heard that from the transparency that the CFTC talks about, please let me know. And last thing from Bart here, in terms of how the manipulation actually works, which is exactly what happened on February 2nd, here's some explaining that.
Again, I appreciate you mentioning the spoofing. Curious, because my understanding of how some of the manipulation has occurred is that, if silver is trading $20.05, there's a lot of stop orders placed around the $20 handle. So often if the price can get pushed a little bit, then you get a lot of those high frequency algorithms kicking in, and then you'll see a drop, with many feeling that people kind of nudging a little are then able to buy lower. Does that sound like a reasonably accurate portrayal to put it in perspective to folks, or would you phrase it differently?
Well, it's a good portrayal, but it's a very good portrayal.
My words is confirmation. So, also mentioned I'd go through the evidence I submitted, do a quick version of that. Here you can see JP Morgan Chase SLV required to add the physical silver. Here's the phone call. Here's listing out. There's 34 million shares added the 29th. Here's showing the context of that. Here's showing that nobody, former auditor, can't figure it out. Here's BlackRock. Here's the price rising. It's all written out. We've made a link in the description field. You can see this. Here's a few hours later, JP Morgan publishing this report in the middle of all that, downgrading the sector. Here's the interview with Bart Chilton. I don't know if they've ever seen it. Never contacted me about it. There's Market Watch. Here's the equities that got crushed. Price dropping despite possibly the greatest demand a single day in history, at least on the ETF side. It's all written out. It's all written out. Ross has been sitting on it. That one since February 12th. And then I did another one after we caught Jeff Curry lying about all this and confirming things. So not making it up. It's Bart Chilton. There's Saturday 14th. Here's Jeff Curry. Confirms there's a short position. Says the shorts are the ETFs. Is he being questioned? I don't know. Maybe he misspoke. But in this particular context, that impacted the market. What's the justice process? Is it happening? Here's the prospectus changes showing that possible authorized participant. Again, that's Jeff Curry. Large bank, substantial short position. It's all here. This is what your regulator has been sitting on while he does his investigation. So all the people that I see saying they're pissed off because the price got hammered, they see it getting spoofed. Just know this is what first one since February 12th. This one since April 6th. Ross has had time for climate warming for going on 41 years now of silver manipulation. Actually, much longer than that, to be completely honest. But silver tightness spreads to London. Recorded an interview. There you go. Did all the work for you, just like Harry Markopolos did for the SEC. Hey, here's Rosten Behnam. Have you questioned Jeff Curry when he said they were shorting COMEX futures when it says in their own prospectus, trust does not hold or trade in COMEX futures? Here's the price chart. Again, I mean, how many of these do I have to put in there? There's the spoof. Explain that. What is your investigation uncovered? It's all laid out here. Are you trying to find it, or are you trying to ignore it? Rosten, that's why people are pledging money. They're not being taxed, but they're voluntarily taking money. Now in a couple of days, it's up to $14,000 to get you to answer some of these questions, because I can't find the answers anywhere. Here's Rick Rule, Sprott Global. Is heavily involved in the PSLV Trust, arguably the largest buyer of silver in the world. What he said.
You are listening to Mining Stock Education, where you'll learn from the top leaders in the natural resource sector and uncover quality mining investment opportunities.
We've been able to buy about 30 million ounces of silver. Now, I'm not trying to say it's always been easy, but we've been able to do it. We're probably the largest real physical silver buyer in the world. And so we get very good service from the market. But it has actually begun to become difficult for institutions to buy silver.
Rosten Behnam, is your investigation aware of that? Why do you think that it's becoming harder to buy silver? Why is the price of silver lower now than before the whole silver squeeze thing started? If people have been buying, here's one of the largest institutional buyers, and he can't find silver. Well, actually, I have an idea, because he actually talked about regulators. Let's hear what the same man had to say.
But remember, too, Bernie Madoff, people that work there. But what the SEC does is promulgate.
You haven't got a bad asset. We've seen that asset 4 times. It didn't work the last 3 times. It's not going to work in markets. Should the exchanges step up to the plate and do more?
No.
Right. You don't want the control. Let the markets.
No, listen.
Resolve.
I mean, that's the most pernicious circumstance where investors and speculators allow themselves to devolve responsibility for their success or failure to a bunch of bureaucrats. That's totally insane. I know many people that work for the SEC, and there are many fine people that work there. But what the SEC does is promulgate the false belief that they protect investors. You'll remember the alleged market failing, in truth, a regulatory failing of Enron. The consequence of the Enron failing is that we put in place Sarbanes-Oxley, which even Warren Buffett, a great fan of regulators, has said burdens the system with $100 billion a year in regulatory expense that wasn't there before. In other words, as taxpayers and shareholders, we have instituted annually losses that are greater to the system that occurred as a consequence of the Enron fraud. And by the way, before Sarbanes-Oxley, fraud was against the law. But remember, too, Bernie Madoff. Mr. Madoff is alleged to have stolen $28 billion and existed in that incarnation for 16 years. An audit, of which he would have had to gone through 8 by law at that point in time, involves looking at the trade blotter and looking at the check register, calling third parties to make sure that the trades took place and that they got paid for. I mean, I could have busted him, particularly because in the entity in question, he didn't make a trade. The idea that somebody who didn't make a trade could be subjected to an audit where the trade blotter, the non-existent trade blotter, had to match with the non-existent check register. The idea that investors were somehow protected by these regulators who either didn't or didn't successfully complete 8 audits over 16 years, exposes the greatest fraud of regulation, which is to say that the regulators protect you. The regulators create an aura of confidence and respect around the industry, which the industry does not deserve.
And again, just to review, last time this happened in silver, here's what the regulators did. Better.
And was telling the CFTC in no uncertain terms was that by closing the silver market, they risked a major financial collapse on both sides of the Atlantic. As it turned out, the Commission decided to do nothing and let Beige take their chance when business started the following day.
The situation was serious, potentially grave, but there's a philosophical line that has to be drawn. The CFTC is here to protect small customers and commercial users of the commodities markets. It is not here to protect large speculators and the brokerage houses that seek their business. That's what closing would have done.
How far do you think this whole affair has damaged the confidence of the people that you seek to protect, the small investors, in commodity trading here in the United States?
I would say that it has made people far more aware of the speculative, sometimes dangerously speculative nature of these markets. It will therefore make them more cautious. The lesson is probably all to the good in that respect.
But could it happen again?
It could conceivably happen again. I don't think the tools we had available were strong enough to stop it. I think those tools should be put in place so it can't happen again. We can't take a risk that something which comes out of simply a desire for excessive speculation is going to tear the financial fabric of the United States. We cannot take that risk again.
They didn't take that risk. The CFTC is complicit in guaranteeing it. So like I said, that's what I found. Obviously, a lot of unanswered questions. Surprised they're that to get answers to. But tomorrow morning, April 20th, I'll be in front of the CFTC's office trying to get answers. But I'll bring the camera. And Wednesday, I'll walk to Congress and the building I can find. See if anyone can figure out, because I can't. We'll check back in soon. It's going to be fun.